3 hours before the wedding, the woman the city would soon call Mrs. Vittori was kneeling on a cold marble floor, her hands trembling, waiting to find out if she would walk out alive. The man standing in front of her was Marcus Vittori, New York's most untouchable mafia boss, a man who didn't threaten. He decided, and once he did, there was no appeal. Everyone believed their marriage was a sudden alliance of power and desire. What no one knew was that it began as a sentence. She had overheard something she was never meant to hear. A name, a betrayal, a truth buried deep enough to kill for. Marcus looked at her the way one looks at a problem with no clean solution. Then he spoke, his voice calm, lethal, final. "Marry me," he said, "or you won't leave this room alive." And in that moment, Scarlett realized this wasn't a love story yet. It was a fight for survival. Scarlett had never believed her life could brush against the world of people who lived above the law. Her days were measured in shifts and tips, in rent deadlines and tired smiles she practiced in mirrors before work. That night in Manhattan was supposed to be nothing more than another temporary job, another blur of polished shoes and crystal glasses. The ballroom glittered with wealth so excessive it felt unreal, chandeliers scattering light like frozen stars, champagne flowing as if money itself could be poured and replaced without consequence. Scarlett moved through it quietly, exactly as she always did, invisible, useful, forgettable. She remembered the warning clearly. It came earlier in the evening, delivered in a calm, even voice that carried more authority than shouting ever could. No staff on the 3rd floor after 9. The room had subtly shifted then, as if everyone had leaned away from a single point of gravity. Scarlett didn't know the man's name yet, but she remembered his presence. Tall, still, dangerous in the way predators were dangerous when they didn't need to move. At 9:20, her manager cornered her near the service bar. The smile was tight, impatient. "3rd floor," she said. "Conference room. Go clean it, now?" Scarlett hesitated, reminding her of the rule, but the look she received made the choice for her. People like Scarlett didn't argue. They obeyed. The staircase grew quieter with every step. Music faded. Laughter dissolved into echoes. By the time she reached the 3rd floor, the air felt heavier, charged with something she couldn't name. The corridor lights were dim, casting long shadows that stretched like warnings across the marble floor. Scarlett told herself she would be quick, in and out. No one would even know she'd been there. The door to the conference room was slightly ajar. She pushed it open just enough to step inside and froze. Voices drifted from the far end of the room, low and controlled. Men who were used to being listened to. Scarlett stood perfectly still, heart hammering, as fragments of conversation reached her. Words like betrayal and clearance and timing. Then a name was spoken, sharp enough to cut through the air. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Scarlett didn't understand everything, but she understood enough to know she was somewhere she shouldn't be. She took a careful step backward, her shoe brushing the floor with the faintest sound. The voices stopped. Silence crashed down, thick and absolute. "Who's there?" a man demanded. Scarlett's breath caught in her throat. She turned to run, but another figure moved, blocking the exit. Panic surged, cold and paralyzing. This was it, she thought. This was how people like her disappeared quietly, without headlines, without questions. The door behind her opened. The shift in the room was immediate. The tension didn't vanish. It rearranged itself. Scarlett felt it without looking, the way animals sense the arrival of something more dangerous than themselves. Marcus Vittori stepped inside. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask what had happened. His gaze swept the room once, sharp and efficient, before settling on Scarlett. "Leave," he said simply. The men obeyed without hesitation, filing out as if they'd never been there at all. When the door closed, the silence became unbearable. Marcus gestured toward the hallway. "Come with me." His tone didn't invite refusal. Scarlett followed, legs trembling, into a private room tucked away from the rest of the floor. The door shut behind them with a soft, final click. He studied her in silence, dark eyes assessing, calculating. Scarlett stared at the floor, bracing herself. She had already accepted the ending in her mind. Death felt inevitable now, almost merciful compared to the fear twisting her insides. "You heard something upstairs," Marcus said at last. It wasn't a question. "I didn't mean to," Scarlett whispered. "I was told to clean, I know." He turned away, pacing once, as if the answer displeased him. "You understand what that means, don't you?" Scarlett swallowed hard. "No," she lied. Marcus faced her again. "Normally, someone in your position wouldn't leave this room." Her hands clenched at her sides. Images of her sister, her tiny apartment, the life she'd fought to keep afloat flashed through her mind. Scarlett lifted her chin, forcing herself to meet his gaze. If this was the end, she wouldn't beg. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. Surprise. Perhaps. Or recognition. He turned his back to her, silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, deliberate. There is one alternative. Hope flared before she could stop it. I'll do anything, she said, the words tumbling out. Marcus looked at her then, really looked at her. You don't know what you're offering. He stepped closer, close enough that Scarlett could feel the warmth radiating from him. Marry me. The world tilted. What? The word came out broken. A marriage, Marcus continued, unflinching, public, legal, immediate. He held her gaze as he spoke, as if daring her to look away. You leave here tonight as my wife, or you don't leave at all. Scarlett let out a breathless laugh, hysteria creeping in. You don't even know me. I know enough, he replied. You listened. You didn't scream. And you stood up when you thought you were about to die. The logic was brutal, twisted, terrifying. Scarlett's heart pounded as the choice closed in around her. This wasn't a proposal. It was a sentence dressed in silk. What if I say no? She asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. Then this conversation never happened. And you won't see sunrise. Silence stretched between them. Scarlett closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision settle into her bones. When she opened them again, fear was still there, but so was resolve. Fine, she said softly. I'll marry you. For the first time. Marcus exhaled. As the door unlocked and the distant sound of the party returned, Scarlett realized the truth too late. She hadn't been saved. She had been claimed. And whatever waited beyond this night would change her life forever. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. Scarlett didn't remember leaving the third floor. She remembered fragments instead, moments stitched together by shock. The quiet efficiency with which Marcus moved. The way doors opened before him without a word. The private elevator descending while the music of the gala continued somewhere above, blissfully unaware that a life had just been rewritten. When they stepped outside, the city felt unreal. Manhattan glittered as it always had, indifferent and bright, cars gliding past as if nothing had shifted. Scarlett hugged her arms around herself, suddenly cold. Marcus's driver opened the door, eyes lowered, expression unreadable. No one asked questions. No one ever did. The car pulled away from the curb in silence. Scarlett watched the lights blur past the window, her reflection faint against the glass. She kept waiting for panic to crash into her, for the weight of what she'd agreed to become unbearable. Instead, there was only a strange, hollow calm. Survival did that to people. It pushed everything else aside. You'll stay with me tonight, Marcus said at last. His voice was steady, as if they were discussing a schedule change rather than a marriage forged in fear. It's safer. Scarlett nodded. She had learned not to ask what safety was being measured against. The house stood behind iron gates and high hedges, elegant rather than imposing. Scarlett had imagined something colder, darker. Instead, warm light spilled from tall windows, and the scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air. It looked like a place meant to be lived in, not feared. The contradiction unsettled her. Inside, an older woman waited near the entrance. Her silver hair was pinned neatly back, her eyes sharp but kind. She looked at Marcus first, then at Scarlett, and something softened in her expression. So, she said gently, you're the girl who walked in from the storm. Marcus stiffened. Rosa, hush. Rosa interrupted, stepping closer to Scarlett. You look exhausted. She took Scarlett's hands without hesitation, her grip warm and grounding. You're safe here. Safe. The word almost undid her. A room was prepared for Scarlett before she could protest. It was larger than her entire apartment. The bed dressed in soft linens, a lamp casting a gentle glow across the walls. When the door closed behind her, the quiet pressed in, and the reality of the night finally caught up. She was engaged to a man she barely knew, a man who could decide whether someone lived or disappeared, a man whose protection came with invisible strings she could already feel tightening. A soft knock sounded. Marcus stood in the doorway, jacket removed, sleeves rolled up. Without the sharp lines of his suit, he looked more human, more dangerous in a different way. There will be a ceremony, he said. Soon, quiet, legal, so it's real. Scarlet murmured. Yes. He hesitated, then added, There are rules. For your safety. Her mouth curved in a bitter smile. Of course there are. Marcus met her gaze. You won't be touched. You won't be questioned. And you won't be used against me. The words lingered. Used, Scarlet repeated softly. His jaw tightened. I don't make promises I can't keep. When he left, sleep didn't come. Scarlet lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that had led her here. She wondered how many choices in her life had been illusions, paths that only felt optional until they weren't. Morning arrived quietly. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, gentle and almost mocking. For a brief moment, Scarlet forgot where she was. Then memory rushed back in. At breakfast, Rosa chatted easily, asking Scarlet about her family, her work, her favorite foods. Marcus listened more than he spoke, his attention flicking to Scarlet whenever she answered, as if cataloging details. It felt intimate in an unexpected way, and Scarlet wasn't sure how to handle it. Later that day, a woman arrived with a measuring tape and a clipboard. For the dress, she said briskly. Scarlet blinked. The wedding dress. Yes, Marcus replied, already turning away to take a call. The speed of it stole her breath. There was no time to process, no room to hesitate. As measurements were taken and fabric samples spread across the bed, Scarlet felt herself drifting further from the girl she had been the night before. In the afternoon, she wandered the house, trying to ground herself. She found a study with shelves lined with books and files neatly arranged on a heavy desk. Names caught her eye. Dates. Connections. One name, in particular, made her stomach tighten. Caruso. She froze. It was the same name she'd heard whispered in the conference room, the same one that had made men lower their voices. The realization settled heavily in her chest. Whatever Marcus was protecting her from, it wasn't abstract. It was specific, dangerous. The door closed behind her. You shouldn't be in here, Marcus said calmly. Scarlet turned slowly. That name, she said. It's why I'm here. Isn't it? Marcus studied her for a long moment, weighing honesty against control. Yes, he said finally. Caruso doesn't tolerate loose ends. Scarlet felt something twist inside her. So I'm a loose end. You were, Marcus corrected. Now you're protected. At what cost, she asked. Marcus didn't answer. That night, lying alone in the unfamiliar bed, Scarlet stared into the dark and understood the truth she hadn't allowed herself to face. This marriage wasn't just a shield. It was a line drawn in blood and power. And by crossing it, she had stepped into a world where survival meant learning how to stand without breaking. The fear hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed shape. The ceremony happened at dawn, when the city was still holding its breath. There were no guests, no flowers lining an aisle, no whispered excitement. Only a small room inside a courthouse that smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. Scarlet stood beside Marcus, her hands folded tightly in front of her, listening as a judge recited words that sounded unreal, distant, as if they belonged to someone else's life. When it was over, nothing dramatic followed. No applause, no kiss. Marcus signed the papers. Scarlet followed, and the clerk stamped the documents with practiced indifference. Just like that, she became Scarlet Vittori. Outside, the sky was pale and colorless. Marcus placed his coat over her shoulders as they stepped into the cool morning air, his touch brief and careful, as though he were afraid to cross a boundary neither of them had named. Scarlet didn't thank him. She wasn't sure what gratitude meant in a marriage born from fear. Back at the house, the staff moved with quiet efficiency, already aware of the change in her status. The way they addressed her shifted subtly, respect layered with caution. Scarlet felt like a guest in her own life, watching everything from a slight distance, afraid that if she touched it too firmly, it would shatter. The bedroom they were meant to share was large, elegant, deliberately neutral. 2 beds stood apart, separated by a small table and an unspoken agreement. Marcus paused at the doorway, as if assessing the room the way he assessed everything else. You'll be more comfortable here, he said. If you need anything. Tell Rosa? And you? Scarlet asked before she could stop herself. Marcus met her gaze. I'll be close. He left her then. And Scarlet sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the space between the 2 mattresses. It felt symbolic in a way she didn't like to think about. The days that followed passed in a strange, suspended rhythm. Scarlet learned the routines of the house, the way security shifted at certain hours, the names of the people who moved quietly through the corridors. Marcus was present but distant, checking in without intruding, protecting without touching. It was clear he was determined to keep the terms of their unspoken agreement intact. At night, the silence grew heavier. On the third night, Scarlett woke suddenly, her heart racing, the echo of a dream clawing at her chest. In it, she was back on the third floor of the gala. The doors closing one by one, voices whispering her name as the walls pressed in. She gasped, sitting up, her breath uneven. Marcus was already awake. He stood near the window, fully dressed, as if sleep had never been an option for him. He turned at the sound, his expression sharpening instantly. "You're not all right. I'm fine," Scarlett said automatically. Then shook her head. "I'm not." He hesitated, then crossed the room, stopping a careful distance from her bed. "Do you want water?" Scarlett nodded. When he handed her the glass, their fingers brushed accidentally. The contact sent a strange warmth through her, unexpected and unsettling. She pulled her hand back too quickly, nearly dropping the glass. "Nightmares?" Marcus asked. "Yes," she admitted. "I keep thinking this isn't real. That I'll wake up and be back in my apartment." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. "If that were possible," he said quietly, "I would have let you go." The honesty in his voice startled her more than reassurance would have. "Why didn't you?" she asked softly. He turned away, his shoulders tensing. "Because Caruso doesn't forgive mistakes. And because I couldn't risk you becoming one." The words settled between them, heavy and sharp. Scarlett watched his reflection in the glass, the rigid control in his posture. For the first time, she wondered what it had cost him to make the choice he had. The morning after, the house filled with visitors, associates, allies, people who came to see the woman Marcus Vittori had married without warning. Scarlett stood beside him, composed, returning polite greetings while studying faces. Some were curious, some were skeptical. A few looked openly displeased. She noticed how often their gazes flicked to her, measuring, assessing. She was not being welcomed. She was being evaluated. Later, in the quiet of the hallway, she overheard a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. Marcus's voice drifted from the study, low and controlled. "Yes, she's in place. A pause. Caruso will move once he's convinced she matters." Scarlett stopped breathing. "She doesn't know." Marcus continued. "She can't." The words hit with more force than any threat. In place matters. Scarlett stepped back before anyone could see her, her heart pounding painfully. She retreated to her room, closing the door softly behind her. So this was the truth. She wasn't just protected. She was positioned. That night, when Marcus entered the bedroom, Scarlett pretended to sleep. She felt his presence, the pause in his steps as he looked at her, the weight of something unsaid pressing into the air. He stood there for a long time. "This wasn't supposed to be like this," he murmured quietly, more to himself than to her. Scarlett lay still, tears sliding silently into her hair. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, to scream that she wasn't a strategy. But another voice inside her whispered caution. Survival first, understanding second. In the darkness, Scarlett made a decision. If she was going to be part of this game, she wouldn't remain blind. She would watch. She would learn. And when the time came, she would decide for herself whether this marriage would break her or make her dangerous. Across the room, Marcus sat awake, staring into the dark, unaware that the woman he had tried so hard to shield was already changing the rules. Scarlett understood very quickly that being Marcus Vittori's wife did not mean being accepted. It meant being watched. The first public appearance came without ceremony, a private luncheon hosted by one of the old families, elegant and deceptively polite. Scarlett wore a pale dress chosen by Rosa, simple enough to avoid accusations of ambition, refined enough to avoid accusations of ignorance. As she entered the room beside Marcus, conversation softened but did not stop. Eyes followed her openly now, no longer pretending discretion. She felt it like a current beneath her skin. Introductions were made, names passed, smiles exchanged. Some were warm, most were not. A woman with sharp eyes and a softer smile leaned toward her. "You must forgive our curiosity," she said lightly. "Marcus isn't known for surprises." Scarlett returned the smile, calm and measured. "Neither am I," she replied. The woman blinked, then laughed a little too loudly before turning away. Marcus glanced at Scarlett, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. He didn't speak, but he stayed closer after that. By the end of the luncheon, Scarlett's composure was intact, but her chest ached with the effort of holding it together. She excused herself to the terrace, grateful for the cool air and the distance from voices sharpened by judgment. The city stretched endlessly below, indifferent to power and fear alike. You handled that well, Marcus said, joining her. They weren't being kind, Scarlet replied. No, he agreed. They were testing you. She turned to face him. And a pause. Then, you didn't give them what they wanted. The acknowledgement settled quietly between them, more intimate than praise. Scarlet felt it anyway, a warmth she hadn't expected. I don't want to be paraded, she said. If I stand beside you, it has to mean something. Marcus studied her for a long moment. It does, he said, whether they admit it yet or not. That night, security tightened without explanation. Guards doubled, doors locked sooner. Marcus moved through the house with sharpened focus, his phone rarely leaving his hand. Scarlet watched him from the edge of rooms, seeing the strain beneath his control. They're restless, he said later, loosening his tie as he stood by the window. Caruso is watching. Scarlet's pulse quickened. Watching me? Yes. She took a breath. Then stop pretending I don't exist when you plan. Marcus turned sharply. This isn't about pride. No, she replied. It's about respect. The tension stretched between them, fragile and dangerous. Marcus looked as though he might argue, then stopped himself. There will be a dinner, he said instead. Soon. Neutral ground. You'll come. It wasn't a question. The dinner was worse than the luncheon. Longer, sharper. The table was arranged with deliberate intent. Scarlet placed just close enough to Marcus to be visible, just far enough to feel isolated. Conversation flowed with surgical precision, every word measured. When a man raised his glass and said, "Two unexpected alliances," the pause that followed was intentional. Scarlet felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She stood. The movement alone drew silence. Unexpected, she said calmly, lifting her glass. Doesn't mean unconsidered. Her gaze swept the table, steady and unflinching. Some choices are made quickly, others are made because delay is more dangerous. A murmur rippled through the room. Marcus watched her closely, tension flickering into something else respect edged with concern. The conversation resumed, cautious now, recalibrated. Later, in the car, silence pressed in. Finally, Marcus spoke. You challenged them. I set a boundary, Scarlet replied. They'll test it. I know, she said. But it's mine. The consequence arrived the next morning. A discreet message delivered to Marcus alone. Scarlet watched his expression harden as he read it. Caruso wants to meet. He said, not privately. He wants to be seen. Scarlet didn't hesitate. He wants to see me. Marcus looked at her, the conflict clear in his eyes. Yes. Then let him, she said. If I hide now, he learns I can be moved. The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus exhaled slowly. You don't understand how dangerous that is. I understand exactly how dangerous it is, Scarlet replied. That's why it matters. That evening, she found herself standing in a room filled with people who had decided long ago how the world worked. Caruso arrived late, as expected. His presence carried an easy confidence, his smile smooth and practiced. When his eyes found Scarlet, something sharpened behind them. Mrs. Vittori, he said warmly. You're braver than I imagined. Scarlet met his gaze without flinching. I'm learning. They spoke briefly, words layered with implication. When Caruso leaned closer and murmured, Your husband won't like this, Scarlet replied softly. My husband trusts me. Whether it was true or not, it sounded like a declaration. That night, back at the house, Marcus found Scarlet standing alone in the study. You forced his hand, he said quietly. I forced him to see me, she replied. Marcus studied her, something fundamental shifting behind his eyes. You're changing the rules. Scarlet held his gaze. So are you. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware that a woman who had once been meant to disappear had just stepped fully into the light and refused to step back. The meeting with Caruso changed the rhythm of the house. Scarlet felt it before anyone explained it to her, in the way footsteps became quieter, in the way guards avoided lingering in doorways. Marcus moved through the days with an intensity that bordered on relentless control, as if holding everything in place by force of will alone. He spoke less, listened more, and slept even less than before. Scarlet watched him carefully. She had learned that silence, in this world, was never empty. One evening, she found him in the study long after midnight. The room was dim, a single lamp casting sharp shadows across the desk. Papers lay spread out in careful order, but Marcus wasn't looking at them. He sat back in his chair, fingers pressed to his temple, his expression stripped of the armor he wore everywhere else. You're pushing yourself too hard, Scarlett said quietly. Marcus didn't look up. This isn't the time to slow down. It's the time to break, she replied, stepping closer. If you don't stop pretending you're made of something unbreakable. He laughed softly, without humor. I stopped pretending a long time ago. Scarlett studied him for a moment, then sat across from him. Caruso isn't just a rival, she said. He knows you too well. Marcus's jaw tightened. He learned from the same people I did. That's not an answer, Scarlett said gently, silence stretched between them, heavy and deliberate. At last, Marcus stood and walked to the window, his back to her. My mother was killed when I was 10, he said. Shot in front of me. The words were flat, controlled, but Scarlett heard what lay beneath them. The man who ordered it was someone my father trusted, someone who believed fear was the only language worth speaking. Scarlett's chest tightened. She said nothing. Caruso admired him. Marcus continued. He took those ideas and perfected them. Chaos, intimidation, unpredictability. He believes the world belongs to those who are willing to burn it first. And you, Scarlett asked softly. I believed control was the answer. Marcus said, if nothing moved without my permission, nothing could be lost. Scarlett rose slowly, coming to stand beside him. But people aren't territory, she said. They don't stay still just because you ask them to. Marcus turned to face her, something raw flickering in his eyes. That's why I tried to keep you out of this, by turning me into leverage, Scarlett replied. He didn't deny it. By keeping you alive. The honesty stung more than anger would have. Scarlett took a breath, steadying herself. You should have told me, she said. Before I had to figure it out on my own. Marcus's voice lowered. If I'd told you everything, you would have walked away. Would I? Scarlett asked. Or did you decide that for me the question landed hard? Marcus looked at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. I didn't want to risk losing you, he admitted. Scarlett's expression softened. You were already risking that by not trusting me. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus reached out, his hand hovering before he let it fall back to his side. Caruso wants to provoke a mistake, he said. If he can make me react emotionally, he wins. Scarlett met his gaze. Then stop treating your emotions like weaknesses, he frowned. You don't understand what they cost. I understand more than you think, she replied. You're not afraid of Caruso. You're afraid of caring. The truth hung between them, undeniable. Marcus turned away, exhaling slowly. If I let myself care, he said, I give him a weapon. Scarlett stepped closer, close enough that he couldn't ignore her presence. You already care, she said, and he already knows it. The tension between them shifted, something unspoken pressing to the surface. Marcus looked down at her, his expression conflicted, torn between instinct and restraint. For a moment, it felt as though the space between them might finally disappear. It didn't. The interruption came in the form of a sharp knock. A guard entered, face grim. We have a situation, he said. One of our cars was hit. No casualties. Message only. Marcus's eyes hardened instantly. Caruso. Yes. Scarlett felt the familiar surge of fear, but it was different now, focused. Contained. He's escalating, she said. Because he's impatient. Marcus looked at her sharply. You're thinking like him. I'm thinking like someone who wants this to end, Scarlett replied. That night, sleep refused to come. Scarlett lay awake, staring into the darkness, replaying Marcus's words. She understood now that the danger between them wasn't only external. It lived in the spaces Marcus refused to acknowledge, in the fear that loving her would make her the same kind of loss his mother had been. Across the room, Marcus sat awake as well, watching the city lights through the window. He knew he had crossed a line the moment he told Scarlett the truth. She was no longer something he could shield behind strategy. She was standing beside him now, seeing the past he had buried and the future he had never allowed himself to imagine. And Caruso, somewhere in the city, was waiting for exactly that moment of hesitation. The invitation arrived wrapped in politeness and threat, delivered in a cream-colored envelope that felt heavier than it looked. Scarlett knew what it was before she opened it. She could feel Caruso's intention the way one felt a storm before the sky darkened. Marcus read the card once, then again, his expression tightening with each line. You're not going, he said, final and sharp. This isn't a request. Scarlett folded the invitation slowly. He wants me there. That's exactly why you won't be, Marcus replied. He's testing how far he can reach. And if I refuse, Scarlet asked, what does he learn then? Marcus turned to her, impatience flaring. He learns nothing except that I'm protecting my wife. Scarlet met his gaze steadily. He learns I can be controlled. The silence that followed was brittle. Marcus took a breath, as if forcing himself to soften his tone. This is how people get hurt, he said, by confusing courage with defiance. Scarlet's voice lowered, but it didn't waver. This is how people get erased, she said, by letting others decide where they're allowed to stand. The argument ended without resolution. Marcus left the room, already issuing orders to increase security, to seal exits, to contain a future he could sense slipping beyond his reach. Scarlet stood alone, the invitation still in her hand, understanding something with painful clarity. If she waited for permission, she would always be reacting. If she wanted to survive as more than a shield, she had to choose her own risk. She accepted the invitation. The night of the gala arrived, dressed in elegance. Scarlet stood in front of the mirror, her reflection unfamiliar and resolute. She chose a dress that allowed movement, understated but deliberate. No armor was visible, but she wore her resolve like one. When she stepped into the car, she did so without looking back at the house. The venue buzzed with curated charm, donors and dignitaries mingling beneath soft light. Scarlet felt eyes turn toward her immediately, curiosity and speculation trailing her every step. She didn't search for Caruso. She let him find her. He appeared near the bar, as polished as ever, his smile warm and unreadable. Mrs. Vittori, he said, inclining his head. I'm pleased you accepted. So am I, Scarlet replied. I prefer clarity. Caruso studied her, interest sharpening. You surprise me, he said. Most people in your position wait to be escorted. I don't enjoy waiting, Scarlet said lightly. Their conversation moved carefully. Each word weighed. Caruso spoke of charity, of rebuilding trust, of the dangers of misunderstanding. Scarlet listened, noting what he emphasized and what he avoided. When he leaned closer, lowering his voice, she didn't step back. Your husband won't like this, he murmured. Scarlet met his gaze. My husband trusts me. Whether that was entirely true didn't matter. It was the message that did. Across the room, a subtle shift rippled through the crowd. Phones buzzed. Security tightened. Marcus arrived like a storm contained, his presence commanding without effort. When his eyes found Scarlet, fear flared openly before he masked it. He crossed the room in long strides, stopping just short of her. What did you do? He asked quietly. I showed up, Scarlet replied. So he would stop circling. Marcus's jaw tightened. You put yourself in his line of fire. I stepped into it, she said. So you wouldn't have to keep guessing where it was. Caruso watched them with open interest, as if enjoying a private performance. You see, he said pleasantly, this is what happens when people refuse to play their assigned roles. Marcus turned his gaze on Caruso, cold and lethal. You invited my wife to provoke me. Caruso smiled. I invited her to meet me. The tension snapped when a server stumbled nearby, a tray clattering to the floor. In the momentary distraction, Scarlet felt it the shift she had been waiting for. Caruso's attention flicked, just briefly. She used it. Your mistake, Scarlet said softly to him, is thinking fear makes people predictable. Caruso's smile thinned. And yours, he replied, is thinking bravery makes you safe. The night ended without bloodshed, but the message was unmistakable. As Scarlet left the venue with Marcus, the city air felt sharp against her skin. Marcus didn't speak until they were in the car. The doors closed, the engine humming. You disobeyed me, he said. Yes, Scarlet replied. You could have been killed. Yes. The car moved through the city in tense silence. Finally, Marcus spoke again, his voice quieter now. You can't do this again. Scarlet turned to him fully. I can't go back, she said. Not after tonight. If I'm going to be your wife in name only, then I'll always be a target. If I'm your partner, I'm harder to break. Marcus stared ahead, conflict written into every line of his posture. You're changing the equation. I am the equation, Scarlet said. When they reached the house, the consequences arrived swiftly. Reports came in of movements, of whispers, of alliances shifting. Caruso had been forced into the open. If only slightly. He had seen her choose. He had seen Marcus react. In the quiet that followed, Marcus finally turned to Scarlet, his voice raw. You terrify me, Scarlet softened, reaching for his hand. Good, she said. Then you know what it feels like when you don't control everything. He didn't pull away. He squeezed her hand instead. Just once, as if accepting a truth he could no longer deny. By crossing that line, Scarlett had changed the rules of the game, and there would be no retreat from the danger or the partnership that came next. The retaliation came sooner than either of them admitted it would. The house woke to tension before dawn, the kind that crawled along the walls and settled into the bones. Marcus moved through corridors with clipped precision, voice low as he issued instructions, his attention never straying far from Scarlett. He didn't say her name, but she felt the gravity of his concern in every turn of his head, every pause when she entered a room. Scarlett noticed the changes too. The guards who usually joked quietly no longer spoke. Cars rotated more often. Routes shifted without explanation. This was the language of escalation. And she understood it now. That evening, the power went out. Not completely, just long enough to register. 30 seconds of darkness. Calculated and precise. When the lights returned, Marcus was already on his phone. Jaw tight. "Lock the perimeter," he said. No one leaves. Scarlett stood in the doorway, pulse racing. "This is him!" Marcus didn't argue. "Go to the safe room." She shook her head. "If I hide now, he wins." Marcus turned sharply. "This isn't a lesson you need to learn." "It's one you need to stop teaching me," Scarlett replied. The knock came before either could move. It was polite. Too polite. A man stood at the gate, hands visible, posture relaxed. A messenger. Marcus didn't let Scarlett out of his sight as the phone was handed over, already playing a video. The footage was grainy, shot from across the street. Scarlett recognized the corner immediately. Her volunteer center, her routine, her vulnerability, mapped and recorded. Caruso's voice filled the screen, smooth and amused. "You're brave, Mrs. Vittori, but bravery needs direction." Marcus crushed the phone in his hand. "Pack a bag," he snapped. "We move now." "No," Scarlett said. He stared at her. "This isn't a negotiation." "It is," she replied. "He wants me afraid enough to disappear. I won't." The decision was taken from them on the road. They were 2 cars into the convoy when the lead vehicle swerved. Tires screamed. Glass exploded. Marcus pulled Scarlett down as the world fractured into noise and fire. The car slammed sideways, metal groaning. Smoke filled the cabin. Someone shouted. Someone else fell silent. Hands grabbed Scarlett from behind. A cloth pressed over her mouth. The last thing she heard was Marcus's voice, raw and unrestrained, tearing through the chaos as the darkness closed in. She woke to pain and cold. Her wrists were bound, but not tightly. The detail registered immediately. Consciousness was the point. Fear was the currency. Scarlett breathed slowly, forcing calm into her limbs, listening to the room. A door opened. Light spilled across concrete. Caruso stepped inside, immaculate as ever. "You surprised me," he said. "I expected you to freeze." Scarlett lifted her chin. "You expected me to beg?" He smiled. "I expected you to wait." She tested the bindings again. Subtly. Loose. Careless. "You want Marcus to come apart," she said. "You don't need me alive for that." Caruso leaned closer. "I need you aware." When he left, Scarlett acted. She worked the bindings patiently, ignoring the ache in her wrists. She waited for the rhythm of footsteps, the lull between passes. When the door opened again, she was ready. The moment was messy and fast surprise. Impact. Opportunity. She ran. Corridors blurred into stairwells. Alarms screamed. Shouts echoed behind her. She didn't think. She moved. At a service exit, the night air hit her like a promise. She didn't stop running until her lungs burned and the city swallowed her whole. Marcus found her an hour later. She was sitting on a curb, shaking, blood dried along her sleeve. He didn't speak. He crossed the distance and pulled her into his arms with a force that stole her breath. Scarlett clung to him, the world narrowing to the solid certainty of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. "I didn't wait," she whispered. "I got out." Marcus pressed his forehead to hers, voice rough. "I know." They didn't return home that night. They moved, safe house to safe house, plans reshaped, lines redrawn. Marcus worked without pause. But something had changed in the way he looked at Scarlett now. It wasn't protection alone. It was recognition. Later, when the adrenaline faded and the silence settled, Marcus sat beside her on the edge of a narrow bed. "He wanted to break you," he said quietly. Scarlett met his gaze. "He wanted you to break." Marcus swallowed. "I nearly did." She reached for his hand, steady and sure. "I won't be your weakness," she said. "I won't be your shield either." His grip tightened around hers. "Then what are you?" Scarlett didn't hesitate. "Your choice." The word landed between them, simple and irrevocable. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware that a line had been crossed. Caruso had taken her, but he had miscalculated the cost. Scarlett had returned, changed, not hardened, not diminished, but resolved. And Marcus, for the first time, understood the truth he had been avoiding. She wasn't waiting to be saved. She was walking back into the fight on her own terms. The city did not know Scarlett had been taken. That was Marcus's first decision. No sirens, no headlines, no rumors allowed to grow teeth. By the time dawn bled into the skyline, she was already gone from the place Caruso had chosen, moved quietly through a chain of safe houses that smelled of clean sheets and vigilance. The silence was deliberate. Panic fed Caruso's kind. Control starved him. Scarlett felt the change in herself as soon as the shaking stopped. Fear still surfaced quick flashes, sharp as static, but it no longer commanded her. It informed her. She watched the rooms she entered, the people who spoke to her, the rhythm of how information traveled. She noticed what Marcus noticed now: patterns, gaps, intent. At the third safe house, Marcus brought the circle together. Advisors, security leads, financiers, men who spoke in clipped sentences and waited for direction. Scarlett stood at the edge at first, wrapped in a borrowed sweater, her injuries cleaned and bandaged. No one asked her to leave. No one invited her to sit. Caruso wanted spectacle. One man said, he didn't get it. He wanted emotion. Another added, he got resistance. Scarlett stepped forward. The movement was small, but the room felt it. He wanted a mirror, she said calmly. He wanted to see what you do when he touched what you care about. Marcus turned to her. He didn't interrupt. Scarlett continued, choosing each word with care. He isn't interested in killing me. Not yet. He wants leverage that breathes. He wants you to react publicly so he can call it instability. She paused. If we stay silent, he escalates. If we strike, he reframes. The only way he loses is if he's forced into the open on terms he doesn't control. A few men exchanged looks. Marcus nodded once. Go on. Scarlett felt the weight of the room settle onto her shoulders and accepted it. He wants legitimacy, a stage. He wants to be seen as the man who restores order after chaos he didn't cause. Her eyes lifted. So we give him a stage, one he can't refuse. The summit. Someone said slowly, yes, Scarlett replied, but not the kind he expects. Plans shifted, angles changed. What had been a response became a frame. Marcus watched Scarlett as she spoke, not as a protector now, but as a partner reading the same map from a different elevation. When the meeting ended, the room moved differently around her. Chairs scraped, phones buzzed. No one questioned her place. Later, alone in the quiet, Marcus found Scarlett by the window. The city lay below them, bright and unrepentant. You shouldn't have had to learn this way. He said. She didn't look at him. I would have learned eventually. His voice softened. I was wrong. She turned then, surprised. Marcus rarely said it out loud. About what? About thinking silence would keep you safe. He took a breath. About thinking control could replace trust. Scarlett studied him. Then don't replace it, she said. Stand with me. The summit was announced 48 hours later. Neutral ground, public assurances, a promise of stability. Caruso accepted within the hour. The night of it, Scarlett chose black, simple lines, nothing ornamental. She didn't dress to provoke. She dressed to be heard. As they entered the hall together, the atmosphere tightened. A collective inhale. Whispers skated along the walls. Eyes followed her openly now, measuring a woman who had vanished and returned unchanged where it mattered. Caruso arrived late, as predicted. His smile found Scarlett immediately, bright and assessing. Mrs. Vittori, he said warmly. You look well. I am, Scarlett replied. Thank you for noticing. The discussions began with the usual choreography. Territories, terms, language that promised peace while sharpening knives beneath the table. Marcus spoke with authority, setting boundaries without raising his voice. When the room leaned toward old habits, Scarlett waited. When it was time, she stood. I want to talk about incentives, she said evenly, about who benefits when we fight. A ripple passed through the room. She didn't name Caruso. She didn't have to. Instability creates opportunity, she continued, but it also exposes intent. Caruso chuckled softly. Careful, he said. You're new to this. Scarlett met his gaze. That's why I see it clearly. She spoke of patterns without accusation, of outcomes without blame. She reframed the conflict as arithmetic instead of emotion, a ledger instead of a feud. The room listened, not because she demanded it, but because she made sense. Caruso leaned back, his smile thinning. You're very confident for someone who was taken. Scarlett's voice didn't change. Confidence is what's left when fear stops being useful. Silence followed. Not shock. Consideration. In the corridor where the noise fell away, Marcus caught her hand. He didn't pull her close. He didn't let go. You changed the temperature in there, he said. I changed the terms. Scarlett replied. That night, back in the quiet, the distance between them finally closed without urgency. Marcus reached for her slowly, giving her space to choose. She chose him. The kiss was not a declaration. It was an agreement measured. Steady, real. When they parted, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. He'll come harder now. Scarlett nodded, unafraid. Let him, she said. He finally knows I'm not a message. As the city hummed beyond the glass, both understood the truth settling into place. Scarlett had not survived to be protected again. She had survived to speak, and the world had listened. The fallout from the summit was quieter than anyone expected, and that was how Marcus knew it mattered. Silence followed in measured waves. No retaliatory strikes, no public insults, no sudden shows of force. Caruso didn't disappear. He recalibrated. He withdrew from the edges and moved toward the center, where legitimacy lived and reputations were built slowly, like walls meant to last. Scarlett felt it in the shift of conversations, in the way doors opened more easily now, in the fact that people spoke to her directly instead of through Marcus. She was no longer a variable to be contained. She was a factor to be considered. The invitation arrived a week later. No ornamentation, no threat hidden in courtesy. A closed-door meeting, the old table, the one no one bled at unless they wanted to be remembered for it. Marcus read it in silence. Scarlett watched his face, the old instinct to shield her flaring and fading in real time. He's asking for an ending, Marcus said finally. Not peace, resolution. Scarlett nodded. He wants to lose without being destroyed. And you? Marcus asked. I want him off the board, Scarlett replied. Not as a martyr. The meeting took place beneath the city, in a room carved from stone and history. The table was long and scarred, its surface polished smooth by decades of hands that had promised loyalty and delivered violence. The men who gathered around it were careful with their expressions. This was where power was measured by restraint, not volume. Caruso arrived early. He looked unchanged, immaculate suit, relaxed posture, but something in his eyes was tighter, more alert. He watched Scarlett openly as she took her seat beside Marcus. No flinch, no hesitation. Mrs. Vittori, he said pleasantly. You've made quite an impression. Scarlett returned the look, calm and precise. I prefer permanence to impressions. The discussion began with formalities, territories discussed without naming them, obligations referenced without details. Marcus spoke when needed, his voice steady, unyielding. When tensions edged closer to the surface, Scarlett waited. When she spoke, the room shifted. This conflict has been framed as personal, Scarlett said evenly. It isn't. It's structural. She laid out the pattern Caruso had built, how instability created gaps, how he filled them with influence disguised as solutions. She spoke without accusation, without anger. She spoke as if describing weather. Caruso listened, expression thoughtful. You're very confident, he said. For someone who came into this world by accident. Scarlett met his gaze. Nothing that survives does so by accident. A murmur followed. Not agreement? Recognition? Marcus watched her from the corner of his eye, a familiar tightness in his chest giving way to something else, trust. Fully realized. He didn't interrupt. He didn't correct. He didn't soften her edges. Caruso leaned back, fingers steepled. And what is it you're proposing? Scarlett didn't hesitate. You step back, publicly. You take credit for stabilizing a system you quietly exit. Your network dissolves into the existing order, absorbed rather than hunted. No blood, no spectacle. And in return, Caruso asked, You keep your name, Scarlett replied. And your life? Silence pressed down, thick and waiting. Caruso studied her for a long moment, then smiled, not the charming one, the honest one. You're not asking, he said. You're offering me a graceful loss. Yes, Scarlett said, because anything else makes you dangerous again. Caruso laughed softly. You learned quickly. I had good teachers, she replied, glancing at Marcus without looking away. The decision came without ceremony. Agreements were recorded. Lines were redrawn. When Caruso stood, he paused beside Scarlet. "If you'd been raised in this world," he said quietly, "it would have belonged to you." Scarlet's answer was immediate. "It already does," she said. "Just not in the way you wanted." He inclined his head and left. The room exhaled. Afterward, in the quiet corridor where the past seemed to recede with every step away from the table, Marcus stopped. He turned to Scarlet fully, his expression unguarded. "You ended a war," he said, "without firing a shot." She looked up at him. "You let me." He shook his head once. "I trusted you." The words settled between them, heavy and rare. That night, back above ground, the city felt different, lighter, not safer, but clearer. Marcus poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Scarlet. They stood by the window, watching the lights ripple across the river. "There's a life after this," Marcus said quietly. "If you want it." Scarlet considered the reflection of herself in the glass. Not the girl who had wandered into a forbidden hallway, not the wife forged by fear, the woman who had chosen to stay standing when the ground shifted. "I do," she said. "But only if it's a choice." Marcus met her gaze. "It is." Outside, the city continued, unaware that a chapter had closed without violence. Inside, something gentler took shape. Not peace yet, but the possibility of it. And for the first time since the night they met, the future felt like something they were both allowed to imagine. The city returned to its rhythm without ceremony. There were no fireworks to mark the end of a war that had never been declared. No headlines announcing the quiet dismantling of a threat. Power rarely celebrated when it learned restraint. It simply moved on, recalibrated, and pretended it had always intended to arrive here. Scarlet noticed the difference in smaller ways. Fewer guarded looks, fewer doors that required explanation. People spoke plainly again. The air around Marcus felt less coiled, less sharpened by anticipation. For the first time since she had stepped into his world, the danger receded without demanding a price. That was when the question surfaced. It came to her one morning as she stood alone in the kitchen, sunlight catching in the glass and steel. The house was quiet. Marcus was out early, finalizing details she no longer needed to hear about. Scarlet rested her hands on the counter and listened to the stillness. No alarms, no whispers, no plans that required her presence. If there was a life after this, it had arrived without asking whether she intended to stay. She found Marcus that evening in the study. The room transformed from a command center back into a place meant for thought. Files were closed. The desk was bare. He looked up as she entered, the tension in his shoulders easing at the sight of her. "It's done," he said. "What needed to be undone?" Scarlet nodded. "I know." He watched her carefully. "You've been quiet. I've been listening," she replied. "To what's left when the noise is gone." Marcus didn't interrupt. He had learned when to wait. Scarlet stepped closer. "You once told me there was a life after this," she said. "If I wanted it, yes, I do," she continued. "But I won't stay because it's safer, and I won't leave because it's easy." Understanding crossed his face, relief, braided with something like fear. "Then tell me what you want." She met his gaze steadily. "I want the choice to go, and the choice to stay, without either of them being a threat." Marcus exhaled slowly, as if setting something down he had carried for too long. He reached into the drawer of the desk and withdrew a set of documents. He placed them on the table between them without flourish. "What are these?" Scarlet asked. "Exit terms," he said. "Your name, your protection, your independence. No conditions, no surveillance, no obligations." He paused. "They were drafted weeks ago." Scarlet stared at the papers. "You were ready to let me walk away." "I was preparing to," Marcus corrected. "Whether I was ready or not." She touched the edge of the documents, then withdrew her hand. "And if I stay?" Marcus's voice softened. "Then you stay because you choose me, not because you owe me." Silence settled between them. Not heavy this time, but full. Scarlet thought of the girl she had been the night she wandered into a forbidden hallway. Thought of the woman who had learned to stand in rooms designed to make her small. Thought of the fear that had shaped her and the resolve that had replaced it. "I won't sign these," she said gently. Marcus's breath caught. Because I'm not leaving." Scarlet finished. "Not today. Not like this." She looked up at him. "But I need one thing. Anything," he said. Without hesitation. "No secrets that turn me into a strategy," she said. "No protection that erases my voice. If we do this, We do it side by side. Marcus nodded once. Agreed. She studied him for a moment longer, then smiled small, real, unguarded. Then I choose to stay. The relief that crossed his face was immediate and unrestrained. Marcus stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. There's something else, he said quietly. Scarlett raised a brow. You're not good at surprises. He smiled faintly. I'm learning. He lowered himself slowly, deliberately, until he was kneeling in front of her. Not a performance, not a declaration meant for witnesses. Just the truth, offered without armor. I don't want a marriage built from necessity, Marcus said. I don't want a partnership forged by fear. I want a life where we choose each other every day, even when there's nothing forcing us to. Scarlett's chest tightened. Marcus, he looked up at her, eyes steady. I'm not asking you to be my wife again, he said. I'm asking you to be my equal. She didn't cry, she didn't laugh. She reached for his hands and pulled him to his feet. You already asked me, she said softly. You just didn't know it then. Their kiss was unhurried, certain, built from everything they had survived and everything they still refused to surrender. When they parted, the world felt intact in a way it never had before. Later, as night settled over the city, they stood by the window together. The lights stretched endlessly, a reminder that power would always exist, that danger would never fully disappear. But it no longer owned them. Tomorrow, Marcus said, we start deciding what we build. Scarlett leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. Tomorrow, she agreed. Below them, the city breathed on, unaware that a story born from fear had ended in choice, not because the darkness had vanished, but because two people had learned how to stand within it without losing themselves, and without letting go of each other.